everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are going to be doing something that is unscripted. It is probably going to be a little bit disorganized. It is probably going to be rambly. I'm going to try my best here to have my thoughts all string together in a coherent way, but if you are somebody who is more here for the formalized, more scripted content, this probably isn't going to be your thing, but don't worry. Later this week, I will have more of that line of content out for you guys, so if you want to skip this one for some reason, don't worry about it. I understand, although I do hope you stick around because I think some of the things I'm going to be talking about here today will be important, or at least I hope they will be important if my thoughts go in the direction I think they will probably go. So hopefully you will choose to stick around and watch this anyways and just enjoy the unique experience, because what I'm going to be doing today is more of a sort of cat black true tea style video where it's more of a conversation, it's a discussion, and the emphasis is more on being honest and real in the moment and letting the thoughts go where they will, as opposed to trying to preemptively think about every single possibility and put it together in a really structured and organized fashion. And I think sometimes these conversations do benefit from having that spontaneity in them. I just think that there is something that is more truthful about just letting the words flow out than trying to kind of hammer everything into like a preformed shape of what that conversation is going to look like. And what I want to talk about specifically is why I am not a little. Because right off the bat, I don't want to give the impression that I don't like littles, or I don't like age players, or I think that they're dirty or gross or it's shameful or wrong or anything like that, because I don't, because that's why I've talked about it on my channel before, is I have no problem with any of that stuff, but I'm pretty confident it's not my thing. And there seems to be a bit of confusion about my ability to walk that pathway, as it were, because if you're somebody who is maybe not super familiar with a lot of my content, if you've only seen a couple of my videos, or you don't really like sit down and listen to the parts where I specifically say that this is not my thing, but I do have knowledge and experience about this, so I'm sharing that information with you guys so you can take it into your own relationships, or maybe you can just learn more if you're curious and you want to dispel maybe some of those misconceptions you might hold about this particular BDSM thing. And I just personally don't feel like I have to be a little or be into age play or be any of those things in order to talk about it, but because some people kind of, again, engage on that surface level, they just kind of look at it and go, oh, this is somebody talking about age play, therefore they must be an age player. And I have had this happen online as a content creator, obviously. I have also had it happen on like social media websites like FetLife before, and I have also just had it happen in like real life, at conventions, at dungeons, in conversation groups. I don't know what it is, but I just give people the impression that I must be a little, or I must be into age play or something, and I honestly don't really know what it is. And so I think what I can do here as like a learning tool is share my own thoughts and experiences of dealing with this, of why people think I must be a little, and then also explain why I don't really think that that particular relationship or play is right for me. And also maybe make a little bit of an opportunity to talk about the stereotypes that we have about littles and age players that are maybe creating these assumptions, and maybe that will help people kind of understand the diversity within the kink community a little bit better. So hopefully less people will be making these types of assumptions about other people or about what we think a little or an age player looks like. Now, where do I want to start this conversation? I guess let's just start on the why this isn't my type of play side of things. Just make it very clear. So for those of you who don't know, I am in a BDSM relationship. I am in a power exchange relationship currently that we have been doing for like 3 years at this point. I have been doing power exchange relationships more or less the entire time I've been into the BDSM scene, which I don't necessarily recommend. I think it would have been better if I would have waited a couple months first before I dove in, but nobody was there to tell me not to, and so I did it anyways, and now I am telling you that that's not always the smartest thing to do, and that's a conversation for another time. But I've been doing power exchange relationships for more or less like 5 years at this point, give or take. I have had probably at least 2 solid like power exchange relationships in that time period, and then I have had play partners on and off throughout that entire 5 years. And I got into BDSM originally because I was interested in pet play, and that is still something that is a core kink for me. It's something that I still really enjoy. It's something that I can always go back to and know that no matter what is going on in my life or no matter what else is happening, that's always something I can go back to, and I know it's going to be something that I will have a fun scene with. But because I look like this and I am generally pretty feminine person, I'm relatively petite, I am what did the doctor say? I am 5'4" and 100 pounds. I don't really have much of a chest either. I wear an A cup. I guess I just look like I should be a little. And so whenever I am at events, whenever I am at any sort of BDSM anything, unless it's people who really know me quite well, they just kind of have that assumption that I must also be a little, and or that I'm a kitten. These two things seem to be paired together for some reason, and I don't know why. I have gone to pet play events. I have been wearing full-on pet play gear, a hood, a chest harness. I will be barking and chasing after a tennis ball, and then someone will say to my partner, "Oh wow, what a cute kitten you have." And it's just like, what in that besides my perceived femininity was kitten-like about anything that just happened? What?
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
It's just my brain has trouble processing that, although I do understand that, you know, over the last, say, 10, 20 years, the gender boundaries of pet play have really changed a lot. I think at one point in time, like, kitten play was obviously very stereotypically associated with cis women, and puppy play was stereotypically associated with gay men, and then pony play was kind of the one that was more open for, like, most genders to explore, and now the barriers for that have really been broken down to where, like, anybody can kind of be whatever they want, but not everybody has kind of gotten the memo that it's less and less gender restricted than it used to be, so that's probably the reason for that. But going back to the main subject, which is the perception that I am a little. Now, other than those physical features that I mentioned, I struggle to really understand how I perform littleness in a way that people could read as being little. I don't like a lot of things that are stereotypically associated with that. Like, I'm not really into like mint green or pastels or pinks. I have never owned a binky or an adult diaper or a onesie. I have never worn a frilly pink dress to an event. I have never said or done anything that is overtly littleish that I can really think of, except my voice. That seems to be the cornerstone for when people meet me in real life. They see the dynamic I have with my partner, because there's also an age gap thing going on there, and they also hear my voice and the way that I talk to him and go, ah, yes, I know what this is. This is a daddy little relationship. And that's not what it is at all. Yes, I do have an age gap with my partner. Yes, he is much larger than I am. Yes, he's like a foot taller than me. Yes, I do talk to him with what I guess you could perceive as like a little voice or like a baby voice. And it's hard for me to try and replicate it on command, but I'm just going to try and like give you guys a little bit of a sample here of like, oh yes sir, what would you like to do today? Like, it's just like I pitch shift a little bit, my voice goes up a little bit, I'm a little bit more like playful and like bubbly in my voice, But that's not because I'm trying to be a little girl. It's because in my head, that is what my dog self sounds like. That is my puppy voice. That is what I associate with the, like, pet play side of me, is that kind of like da 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 da. Because in my head, I am basically a fluffy little small pupperino, and I am just like, I'm not like a big growly like Rottweiler or Pit Bull or anything. I'm just like a nice little cute fluffy lap dog that wants cuddles and lots of naps. And I guess that bears enough similarity to littleness to where outside people will perceive that, along with the gender structure of our relationship, with me being a cis woman who's the submissive and more feminine, and then the older adult male dom, and that just causes people to make assumptions about things. And so far it hasn't been true, and it's been rather unfortunate because I've had people make this assumption that I respect quite a lot and that I would assumed know better. And I think partly this was because of the settings I've been in. Like, if I'm going to a pet play event, for example, there's not enough of a solo pet play community outside of a few specific events for there to just be only pets there. They usually also combine it with events for littles and age players to boost up the numbers and attendance, and also because littles and pets just happen to normally play together quite nicely. It's very cute. And so those events get combined, and so people see that I'm going to those events, and I guess they assume more of the little aspect of things than like the pet play aspect of things. Or I am an educator, and it's my job to take classes about things that I don't know about already. And I do take classes about age play. I do take classes about littles and middles and all sorts of stuff like that. I have had multiple interviews with people where I've talked about all those different sorts of dynamics. And because I attend those classes, people wouldn't know. They just assume I'm there because I personally want to know about it for me and my relationship, as opposed to like, oh yes, this is very interesting. I am glad that I know more about this thing directly from somebody who does participate in it, so I can make more informed decisions and communicate about it in a more responsible manner to the people in my life that want to know more about it. And that's basically why I go to things. But then I have people who ask me during presentations, oh, are you a little? And it's like, no, I am a pet. I just thought this would be an interesting class. And they're like, oh, and then you can just see that they're like, oh shit, I've made a mistake. And they shouldn't necessarily be embarrassed about that, but I do think that it's like maybe a good learning opportunity to be like, hey, stereotypes kind of suck. Why do we have them? Why do we have stereotypes? They are just not beneficial to anyone, I feel like, to have them. I think it just puts people in boxes, and people generally don't like being in boxes unless they're doing a sensory deprivation scene. So, what can you do? But that's the misconceptions that people have about me in real life, and I think some of the reasons for that, again, I think it's mostly my voice and the relationship I happen to be in. Also, within like the power exchange world in general, it is quite unusual that somebody my age would be into power exchange. When I go to leather conventions and when I go to discussion groups and things like that, I am almost always, if not the youngest, one of the youngest people there. There's actually somebody that I run into like almost every single time I go to this one convention, and it's like, hey, other like female submissive who's here that's under the age of 30. Awesome. Like, I see you, you see me, hey, little support. Like, and it's just like the two of us. and that's really, that ends up consistently going like from our geographic area. And I find that quite funny, but it's not something that's super common for people in my demographic to participate in, and when most people do, they're doing it from that perspective of age play, of DDLG, etc., etc. And so I get that maybe that's why some people have that assumption in that direction, if it's the real life community. Online is a little bit confusing, because it's like I say in a lot of different places, in a lot of live streams and videos and FAQs and Instagram posts and tweets and everything else, I'm not really into little things, and then inevitably somebody, I guess, who maybe didn't process that or didn't see it will like ask me something about like how my daddy's doing, and I'm like, I don't know, when did I get a daddy who adopted me? I should have this information. It's kind of funny to me. I wonder if part of it is just that like people are used to females who talk about kink on the internet being littles, and maybe just everybody assumes they're like, ah yes, young woman talking about BDSM on the internet, definitely little. Yes, this makes sense to my brain. Don't know. Anyways, I am rambling just like I thought I would ramble. So let us get back to the why I am not a little and why I've kind of determined that this isn't a style of play that works for me. So I, in the scheme of my 5-ish years in BDSM, have had the opportunity to try a bunch of different things, from fire play to rope bondage to sensory deprivation to pet play to needles to knives to like humiliation. I have gotten to try a lot of different things in the time that I've been in the community, which is amazing, and I'm super thankful for it. And part of the benefit of having those many experiences is that I have had a great opportunity to learn a lot about what I'm into and what I am not into, and reflect on that and determine why that is. So I can look at like a knife play scene and I can determine that I like it because of the sensation, but maybe I don't like it when it's like too fearful. Or maybe I like humiliation play because it reminds me to be humble, but I don't like feeling like a piece of trash afterwards. Or like whatever sort of logic I happen to be following at that time, I can sit there and I can process with myself about why it is that I like this thing or why I didn't enjoy it, which is one of many reasons why I say that introspection in kink is so important, because over these 5 years, I have been accumulating self-knowledge so I can make more informed decisions about my kinks. So compared to when I was first in the scene and I didn't really know what I liked outside of pet play, I, kind of had to stumble through a lot of things and was really open to trying whatever. Like if you've ever taken the BDSM test, right, there's one that's like experimentalist, which is more or less like, I'm down for whatever, I want to try a bunch of different things. And when I was newer in the community, that was definitely a lot more prevalent because there were so many things that I hadn't tried yet, and so I didn't really know if they would suit me or not. And the more that I've gotten to try things, the more I've been able to like compare and contrast what types of experiences work for me and what doesn't. And also I've been able to see what other people do and what styles they have. So I have been able to observe people doing all different manner of age play and DDLG types of relationships and scenes. I have been to classes and discussion groups, and I sit there and I listen to it and I hear people that talk about it so passionately and it's like their favorite thing ever, and they would never ever imagine they would be into BDSM if they couldn't have this thing. And I'm just like, that all sounds nice, but it doesn't really sound like my thing. When I think about being a little, obviously a lot of that is connected to the relationship titles, like being a baby girl, being a little, and having a daddy, having a mommy. That's not something that particularly clicks in my brain as like, yes, a thing I would enjoy calling my partner, or I would have enjoyment from my partner calling me that. I think about things like the manner of dress, for example, or the accessories that are oftentimes associated with it, like, again, onesies or pacifier clips or pacifier gags or like baby mittens, or a lot of this is more associated with like young age play. I realize that, but like the general sort of style components, the aesthetic components of being a little don't really appeal to me. I'm not really into like little frilly girly dresses. I'm not even really into like punk little girl clothes, like, because obviously there's many different styles of being a little and not all of it is pink and frilly. There are obviously littles who are like more kind of like creepy and weird and tomboyish, and I think those are wonderful and I would love to see more people representing that online. But even those don't really like seem like me. Like, I'd rather just wear the adult-ish versions of those things. In terms of activities for littles, that's also not really something that I see myself enjoying, like in a scene capacity, like coloring books or watching children's TV shows or really being into Frozen or dolls or model trains or like make-believe play, or eating a ridiculous amount of cookies until I get sick, or like any of a number of other things I could think of related to littleness in terms of a scene. None of that just really seems to click with me. And I thought really deeply about it because, again, I don't have any shame or guilt when it comes to being little. If that was honestly something that I felt would benefit my kink experience, I would certainly be open to trying it. But I just sit there and I think about it and I go, there doesn't really seem to be anything there that I'm not getting out of play that I already do. Because when it comes to being like a pet, being a pet player, I get a lot of that similar energy fulfilled that way that I think people associate with being a little. So like the cutesiness, the playfulness, the snuggling, the love of blankets and cozy things, the fact that I have like chew toys and that sort of stuff. Those are all things that fulfill my pet energy. They don't go into a space where it's like littleness at all, or I feel like I am younger than I am. And that, especially from the age play perspective, is something that I really don't find that appealing. Like, I just don't really think I would enjoy trying to like recapture my childhood or like childlike energy. I kind of like being an adult, and I kind of like being in an adult headspace, or at least, you know, remembering that I'm an adult, like even if I'm like into pet play and stuff, right? Like, it's not like I'm a younger human. I'm just now I'm a puppy, and that's different for me. And I know for not everyone that will necessarily make sense, but that is how I perceive things. That's how I process things. And so for me, it's just something where it's like, you know, I've thought a lot about it. I've experienced a lot of things, and I don't necessarily think that at this time this is something I want to engage in. Now, what I want to make sure to say here is that this is not like a definitive I will never be a little statement. I will never engage in things, because I think when it comes to BDSM, we just change as humans over time. We develop new interests. We have specific partners that introduce things to us in a way that we never thought would click with other people. And so I certainly think it's possible that at some point in the future I might change my mind, and I might find a particular dynamic with a particular person where I do feel comfortable maybe exploring this and finding enjoyment in a way that I don't really feel like I have right now. So I am open to the situation changing. So I think what we've talked about so far is the stereotypes that people have about me being a little, and then why I don't particularly find being a little appealing / why it's a type of play I haven't engaged in before. So I think let us wrap up this conversation then by just having a general conversation about like stereotypes associated with being a little, and like how that might potentially box people in and might also cause us to make assumptions about those around us. So I've already mentioned a lot of stereotypes already when it comes to being a little, because hey, I kind of also rely on stereotypes a little bit when it comes to my understanding of what being a little is. Like, again, pacifiers and onesies and plushies and My Little Pony and Care Bears and Frozen, and just things that generally younger people enjoy that adults don't necessarily get to enjoy, and pink clothing and frilly things and using a baby voice and coloring books and kids TV shows and puzzles and board books and so on and so forth, out to a million degrees. Just name anything a child could potentially like, and a little would probably like it as well. At least some little would, not necessarily every single one. And I think that when it comes to particularly female littles, because that is the experience that I am most familiar with, and I don't necessarily want to make assumptions about other people's experiences outside of that, what it means to be a little for them, or the stereotypes associated with that, because I'm less familiar with it. But when it comes to females in particular, I do, again, think there's that stereotype of like frilliness and just girliness to the nth degree, with like mermaids and unicorns and sprinkles and rainbows and cutesiness and pastels, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case for every little. I think that is what is in fashion now. I think if you go to Instagram, if you go to FetLife, if you go anywhere where people are talking about this in some capacity and people are sharing pictures, you will probably see those things presented as like, this is what being a little looks like. And there are lots of different ways to do it. I did already mention like tomboy littles, or littles who are like creepy and spooky or a little bit more gothic, all of which I love. And actually, when I was very, very first in the community, I don't know if anybody is going to remember this channel, but there was a channel from somebody who was both a pet player and a little, and they were very much along like the creepy, spooky side of things, which I just really enjoyed watching because it was cool to see somebody who did things a little bit differently, like a little bit less My Little Pony, a little bit more Nightmare Before Christmas sort of aesthetic, a little bit more Tim Burton. And they have probably not had a channel in like 4 years, so I think their content is probably long gone at this point. But not all littles look like girls in like pink frilly clothes and schoolgirl outfits, or even like baby voices. Like, some people might not be comfortable with that. And if you have watched my channel before, hopefully you kind of understand that everything is on a spectrum and that there are a million and one ways to do everything related to kink. There's not a one true way. There are, of course, assumptions that people make, but they don't necessarily have to be true. So if you are kind of making the assumption that littles are people who look like me, people who have long hair and are short and small. Ooh. And there's something about SMOL, small, that just like, my brain is just like, I don't know, not my thing. But like people who are like small and petite like me and like cutesy and just whatever this is that makes people think that that is what a little looks like. This is not necessarily what a little looks like. Littles can come in all different shapes and sizes and heights and biological ages and relationship preferences and everything else, gender expression, sexual orientation, whatever. It doesn't matter. Anybody can be a little if they want to be, if that is what appeals to them. And I think by relying on these stereotypes of all of these things to say this is what a little looks like, this is what a little does, we are potentially leaving a lot of people out of the equation that are littles, but maybe aren't like accepted or talked about in the community in the same way because they don't necessarily fit the mold. And the mold also traps people like me into getting stereotyped about being a little constantly. So why don't we just destroy the mold and just not do that anymore? And of course that's a pipe dream. Like, we're never going to get to a point where like we have no stereotypes about what something looks like, because then it becomes very difficult to define and talk about. And so I think we do need to have some kind of mutual understanding about vaguely what this thing is, so we can have conversations about it. And so as a community we can like come up with events for these types of people to go to where they are going to be able to engage in things that they enjoy. So yeah, stereotypes trap people. They create situations where people are misunderstood or they are completely invisible because they don't look like what people assume the stereotype looks like. And I don't think either side of that coin is particularly comfortable to be on. And what I really hope is that like people won't think I'm trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. Like, it's not my intention to like complain and be like, oh my god, I got 3 comments on YouTube that somebody thought I was a little, and like, oh, I'm so offended, because that's not really what it is. I know some people might hear this and like assume that's the situation, and I'm just like having my emotions hurt unnecessarily. It's not really that. I'm not really like angry or upset about it. I'm just like, why does this thing keep happening? Why does this stereotype keep happening? Because I don't see it in me, but other people are clearly reading something that I am completely oblivious to, and that's very interesting to me. So I want to have a dialogue. I want to have a conversation about it. This is not me, hopefully, overreacting to like YouTube comments or mentions on Twitter or like whatever else. This is just a general observation that I have made over numerous years in the kink community, not only just online, but also in real life as well, which I already mentioned. But that's basically everything I wanted to talk about with you guys today. Hopefully you found this interesting and helpful. If you do have any comments or questions or anything else you want to discuss, feel free to leave that down in the comment section below. I would be really curious to hear from anybody who's made it this far in the video, because I know this is quite long. If you have ever had to deal with these types of like assumptions or stereotypes in the community, it doesn't necessarily have to be like related to being a little, but like maybe you're like very short and petite like me, and like you are exclusively a dom, and maybe everybody expects you to be a bottom. Like, that's something that's really common. I hear a lot. You know, are there any situations that you've had a similar sort of thing to what I've dealt with? I would love to hear from you down below so we can support each other and break down these stereotypes that are making it harder for people to be their honest selves and be seen in the community for who they really are. If you enjoyed this video, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week about all sorts of BDSM and alternative lifestyle content. If you really enjoyed this, if you want to support my work, you can do that over on Patreon. Link to that will be down below. I am able to do YouTube exclusively because of Patreon. That's what makes this channel possible, because YouTube does not pay me a red cent for anything that I do. It is all exclusively from Patreon. So I'm so thankful for your support over there. And it also helps me offer you guys extra things like videos and photo shoots and a Discord chat. So if you want to check that out, again, please do. Link to it is in the description box down below. If you already support me over there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you guys next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.